charting our path as well as covering a tiny little bit of theory. So what I'd like to do this evening, and we started right on time, thank goodness, is to give a little bit of an introduction, tell you a little bit about how we're going to approach the course, and to then just tap into our theory a little bit. Please stop me along the way. You'll see this little hand at the bottom. If you guys haven't been familiar with it before, please just stop me and ask me a question. If you don't want to speak, then you can type your question. But the more you are able to ask in the beginning, the easier it is for you guys. So tonight, just a little bit of an introduction, what our module's all about, how we're going to tackle it, and then a tiny little bit of theory. So I just wanted to say who I am. My name is Catherine Young. I am a passionate marketer. I've been in marketing for goodness a long time, both in the corporate world and then in the academic world. I do believe that marketing is the center of all business. So I really have a passion for it, and I hope that you guys do too. Whether you choose to continue with marketing going forward in your BComs, only you will know. But this particular module will give you a little bit of a taste. I just wanted to show you who your textbook is, which one it is. So it's the Canton van Heerden, which is Marketing Management, the South African Perspective. It's a lovely textbook. It's quite fat. I'm hoping you guys have got it because you are going to struggle a little bit without it along the way. And we don't cover the whole textbook, thank goodness. We pick out the very important elements of it, but this is all part of your module outline. Why do we do this introduction to marketing module? Well, it sets the tone. It sets the foundation for marketing in a BCom. Even if you guys choose not to do marketing going forward, you choose another stream, you still need to understand marketing as a discipline within business. And I'm hoping in the next week or so that all of us are going to create our own definitions of marketing. So really, the beginning of this course and this course in general is to set the foundation for marketing going forward. So the slide that you have on your screen now is our syllabus, and we look at 7 learning units broken up into specific chapters. So you will see the marketing environment consists of chapter 1 and 2, understanding consumer markets, and so we go. And what we do in our collabs is we take snippets of this and go through it, and then in between we connect through marketing videos. I did send you quite a whack today, so I won't do that in future in terms of sending you so much. It's just to really start off. So that's our course outline. As I say, it's a very nice course. We are going to use examples to learn. If you have any companies that you either work for or that you are particularly interested in, please let me know, and let's use them to understand our theory, because what we will see with this module is that it is a very, very application-based module. So what I mean by that is, yes, we go through theory, but what we're actually doing is we're applying that theory in our portfolio of evidence. The slide that I'm showing you now is actually your entire syllabus at a snapshot, on one slide at a snapshot. And how we tackle the introduction to marketing, i.e. laying the foundation of marketing, is that we look at what marketing is as a discipline and how it fits into the business world. And I have sent you a couple of things on that as well. And when we meet again, we're going to talk about the definition of marketing after some self-directed learning on your side. We then look, and we're actually going to have a little bit of a look at it tonight, the environment in which companies operate. and I'm going to explain a little bit about that. And then probably the most part of our course lands on the right of the slide. And here we are looking at marketing strategies that companies put into place using what we call the marketing mix, or the 4 P's of marketing, or marketing strategy. So essentially the bulk of our marketing module that we're going to cover in the next couple of months fits into this right quadrant. So we firstly understand what marketing is. We then look at the environment in which companies operate, and then we look at how companies put into place their marketing strategy. And just up front, just to get you to think about what marketing is, and this is kind of my definition or my explanation of marketing. Before we even study marketing, we think it is all about advertising and promotion and adverts, etc. But it is so much more. Marketing is about understanding who your customers are, what they really want, and then designing your marketing strategy to meet those needs of the customer. And most importantly, better than your competitors. So that's really a little bit of a definition of marketing from me just to start. Just looking at the chat, Chris, definitely. At the end, I'm going to tell you how we approach it, but at the end of every session, I will then send you the recording, and you will have access to the slides. Yes, and as you've just said, you can click the download button on the right. So as every time we come into a session, you have access. I've made available the information that I'm showing you. But it is always, I will always send you the collab from the previous night. And remember, they are recorded for your convenience in the event that we have load shedding or all those life things that happen to us or whatever they are. So I just wanted to show you this slide has been very helpful in the past for students because it really is showing us what we are tackling all together, and hopefully it will be of use to you too. So what's the academia around this particular module? So I've already gone through the textbook for you. You guys will know whether you have navigated Learn yet. If you've just started studying your BCom, or if this is your second semester, but please have a good look around this module on VC Learn. Got some lovely, lovely stuff to help you. And as I say, if there's something you're interested in, let's look at it. So actually, I'm really interested in Nike or Apple or Albany Bread or Mr. Price or something, and then we'll use that to go through theory in our online sessions. So this module is assessed via a portfolio of evidence. And what a portfolio of evidence is, if you guys don't know, is it's a group of work or different amounts of work. It's almost assignments all put into one, where you are given it up front. I'm hoping you guys have already downloaded your portfolio of evidence, and that's quite nice because then you kind of know what's coming. And this particular portfolio of evidence is very application based, as I said. So I don't know, has anybody looked at it yet, by the way? Because I know it's very early days, but sometimes we get students that have already looked. But if you have it, you will see that it is about actually applying everything that you learn to specific companies. You will find it on your student portal, where you find all your different, you'll find your pairs, you'll find your module outline, which is very important, and you will find your portfolio of evidence. Please have a very good look for it. What I can do is I can also put it on Learn for You. In fact, let me do that, but I'm not really supposed to do that. You're supposed to access all your documents yourself. It's a little audit strategy from Varsity College. But because this is the beginning and we're trying to actually make your life a little bit easier, let me do that. So your portfolio of evidence is broken up into two parts. Your first part is due on the 28th of September and your second part on the 24th of October. So they're nicely spread out. We've got a bit of time. You guys have got a bit of time, which is really nice. And do I think it's difficult? No, I don't. I'm really hoping you're going to enjoy it. So as with all your other modules in your BCom, we have national support sessions that are specifically dedicated to your assessments. So for part 1, you will have a national support session, the same with part 2, and then your final POE, which is due on the 17th of November, we will do the same. And those are great opportunities to ask questions. And I think you will have quite a lot of questions for this POE. So that's kind of how we are assessed in this particular module. Like your other modules as well, you have 4 ICE tasks. So these are ICE tasks that are done throughout the semester. We used to give you some dates for each one, but it really doesn't work as well as we thought it would. So if you have a look on Learn, you will see that I have identified which activities, they're called stepping stone activities, in this module that you need to do for your ICE tasks. And I've given you a few actually, but you only have to do 4. When you have a look at your POE eventually, you will see that part of what they call the stepping stone activities, and these are activities to help you apply the marketing theory that you learn. This is a critical part of your POE. So not only is it that you are going to earn an extra 10% to ICE tasks, but it also adds to the marks of your portfolio of evidence. Let me just read. No. So just to iterate, your portfolio of evidence is actually 3 parts. We have part 1, it's not called an assignment, for also audit purposes. Part 1, due on the 28th of the 9th, then part 2, due on the 24th of the 10th, and then the final POE, which includes part 1 and part 2, due on the 17th of the 11th. So essentially the final document is also including part 1 and part 2. Does that make sense? Okay, perfect. Any questions on the assessments and what a portfolio of evidence is? Are you guys happy with that? Hi, Louise.
Hello, sorry, this might be a silly question, but just to get clarity. So basically on the 28th, we'll submit part 1. On the next date in October, I think it's 24th, we'll submit part 2. And then for the final, we'll submit part 1, 2, and 3 all together yet again.
Correct. That is absolutely correct. Thank you so much. Well, firstly, there's no such thing as a stupid question. And thank you, that really clarified it for everybody. Yes, Chris.
Hi, Catherine. Do you perhaps have a semester schedule that you can assist us with, that you suggest this week we do these modules and read this chapter, etc.?
Hi, Chris. Yes, what I do every Monday. So I kind of started off today. So what I'm showing you here on the screen now is your timetable pacer. Okay. And what you will see is that we kind of meet every second week. So we'll meet every Monday night, but the weeks that we are not meeting Every Monday, I'm going to send you what to do in that week.
Okay, fantastic. That really, yeah, it really helps a lot, and it especially if you're working full time, it's quite nice to have a pacer to assist you with this module.
Definitely. Definitely. I mean, I can make it more specific, but it works quite well in this module, and hopefully you'll see why, because we use such a lot of videos, and these videos are fantastic. I've got to tell you, and I can say that because I didn't create them. And they're just helpful, and they just help you along the way. So what I'm showing you now in terms of the timetable pacer is that, like this week, we are going to do Learning Unit 1. The next time we meet in 2 weeks' time, we're going to do Learning Unit 2. But in between those 2 weeks, I'm going to send you the work you should be covering, so that when we meet next, Learning Unit 2, we've covered a lot of it, and also you can ask questions. Okay, so that is kind of how we are going to roll. We're going to start at 5:45 every time, just to get a little bit ahead of the load shedding. My lights have just gone out, so I'll try and start before load shedding, just to gather a bit of momentum. Just to look at the chat, no, it is not under more resources at the moment. You will find all your documents, your module outlines, etc. Under on your portal. But I did say literally 2 minutes ago that I will put this POE under more resources for you. It's not really done, but I'm going to do it because it's the beginning of your semester, and it's always hard to start. So that's our timetable, that's our pacer. We meet 7 times, because each time we meet, we discuss a learning unit. And then over and above that, we have a national support session for part 1, part 2, and your final portfolio of evidence. That is set at a national level, and as soon as I get those dates, I will send them to you. So just in terms of our guide this evening and going forward with our sessions, as I said, I will always upload the slides and these videos, so the online collabs, under more resources, but I will also email you them the next day or the day after. So you will always have a record, and as pointed out in the chat, you can also download them from here. You guys already know, thank you, that when you're not speaking, we all make mistakes. I've done it so often when we're not speaking, to switch your mics off, so thank you. And the collabs we must use as discussion and problem areas and application. So your content for this course is quite a lot, and your self-directed learning along the way is important. And Chris, your point about a pacer and what you should be covering is really important, so as not to fall behind. But let's use these sessions to clarify and for key areas. We can't cover everything in the sessions. As I said, self-directed learning is very important. I've told you that we have national support sessions. All sessions are recorded, which is excellent. And we will share all the material in the collabs. What we've also done, I think all modules do it as well, is we've got a little WhatsApp group. I've sent you the link for you to join should you choose to. And what's important here, however, is that the WhatsApp group is not for formal communication. The formal communication between us and for you guys as students and Varsity College is through Learn. So we will always use announcements via Learn. However, that WhatsApp group is for emergencies, for you guys to perhaps chat and clarify between yourselves, but we can't use that as a formal communication group, also because some students don't choose to be part of it. I think some people have aversions to WhatsApp groups. by virtue of the volume of them. So the other point I wanted to make before we start is we all know, we've heard the word plagiarism. And plagiarism is one of our greatest challenges in academia. And we all know that plagiarism is about taking somebody's idea and passing it off on your own. So you guys need to make a concerted effort to understand referencing. And at the beginning of our national support session, we will obviously guide you through referencing, but depending on if you're a brand new student or if this is your second semester, I'm hoping if this is your second semester, you have already consulted the Writing Centre for Assistance with in-text referencing and the referencing list at the end of assignments. It's really, really important, and marks can be lost, contraventions can happen in the event that you are unsure. But we have lots and lots of support via the Writing Centre for you for referencing. So if you are going to use other people's work and ideas, you need to reference it. It's very, very important. This is a slide that makes sense to me, and I'm not sure if it will ever make sense to you, and if it doesn't, throw it away. Don't ever think about it again. But I always look at marketing as a child of two different disciplines that, well, certainly economics you cover in your BCom, but not psychology, and I'm going to explain now. So my belief is that marketing was born from two parents, economics being the mom or the dad, and economics is really about how we use our resources. How do we take the money that we have and go into a shop and spend it? Or how does a government take its taxes that it gets and spends it? So think about it. We are constantly making decisions on how to spend our money. And marketing is also the child of another discipline, which is psychology, which is how we tick as people. So when we go into a store or we go online to purchase something, it's what's happening in our head that causes us to purchase a Nike pair of Takis versus an Adidas. So if we put those two disciplines together, we have got the discipline of marketing, which is about how do companies understand what the needs of people are, who then develop products and services to meet our needs, and then exchange the value, i.e. the value of a product to us as a customer and the value of money to a company. So I hope that makes sense to you. If it doesn't, dismiss it entirely, and maybe we'll come back to it at the very end. Are there any questions before we have a look at some of our theory regarding the setup, anything else going forward? Hi, just getting back to the chat. I was just loading the slides. All ICE activities are under ICE tasks in VC Learn. You'll find everything there, bar the elements that you need to get from your student portal. And you will see that there is an ICE task folder, and it will tell you which activities to complete on VC Learn. So it will say ICE task 1, please complete activity 1.3.1. And you will then go into Learn, look for activity 1.3.1 and complete that activity. So it's all done online, nice and easy. No, I'm not going to do that tonight, I'm afraid. It is huge. It's really a big POE, and that is very much part of the national support session. We just couldn't even contemplate it. The only thing that I can say in terms of what you expect from our POE is the application of theory. And part 1 and part 2 and your final POE are broken into all sorts of different tasks. Recordings, presentations, essays, conducting research. It is very much different elements of application. So I really couldn't do that this evening. I'm sorry. It would just take up a little bit too much time. The best thing for you to do is to go and start looking at that POE now. And then you've got your questions, and we can kind of start off a base. But that national support session is very important to get prepared for that POE. Any more questions before we start? When you say this, are you talking about, what are you talking about, Kevin? Just clarify for me. Are you talking about the POE or the ICE tasks? Yes, so under more resources, you will see ICE tasks. And if you click onto that ICE task, you will see the activity numbers that form ICE task 1, ICE task 2, ICE task 3, ICE task 4. I have specifically said to you, please complete this activity for the ICE task. So the stepping stone activity on Learn becomes an ICE task. Does that make sense? What you can do as well is, if you still have a problem, then go, no, it won't, because as I said, there are activities on Learn. I will go and check what you mean now, but all the ICE task folder is saying is it is showing you which activities or stepping stone activities to complete on Learn. Yes. No, it is under module content and, sorry, more resources and ICE tasks. But you can have a look for that a little bit later. Any more questions? Whoops, I switched that off by mistake. Okay, let's have a look at one of the key areas of your portfolio of evidence. Yes, that is correct. So that is the way to, so Chris has said you click on the activity, you go on to Learn and complete the activity. You don't, all the ICE task folder is telling you is which ones to complete. And when you have a look at your POE, you will see why that is. But you need to have a look at your POE before. Okay, let's have a look at Learning Unit 1. Now, Learning Unit 1 is, as I said, there's this silly little slide that I developed and showed you earlier. The Learning Unit 1 is about setting the foundation of marketing. So it first is trying to understand what marketing is in the world. And I've sent you a couple of videos today. In fact, I sent you 3 videos to try and get an understanding, to put that into perspective. And next time, it's going to be one of our tasks to discuss when we come back, not next week, the week after, to, once we've had a look at Chapter 1 and your self-directed learning, is to try and understand what marketing is, but not these fancy words that the book uses, the words that are in our heads. And because this is a POE question, by the way, but to try and make sense, because here we've got a lovely, long, very winded definition of marketing from the textbook, telling us it is a process in business of planning and executing pricing and communication strategies and distribution strategies and product strategies, but I essentially want us all to come up with versions of what we truly believe marketing is. So you're going to look at that when in your own time. One of the videos I sent you today is the concept of exchange, where marketing cannot happen without two different people. So there is a McDonald's salesperson, and there's you or I purchasing a particular burger. And the concept of exchange is important in marketing to know that something needs to be exchanged between a company and a customer for marketing to happen. The customer's needs must be met. The company must receive some form of financial benefit for that. And each member of the exchange, so the customer and the company, must be happy about it. But go and have a look at the videos that I've sent you, and we'll also clarify that next time. Same with the marketing orientations, and this is giving you a broad perspective of what marketing is and how it has evolved over the years from the Henry Ford. Henry Ford said we only have one car, it's called a Model T, it's black, and that's what you're going to get. That's how marketing started, to now where we are so consumer driven and societally driven, where customers are demanding customized products because of all sorts of various things. So please have a look at the videos that I've sent you on that today as well. And the slides that are here tonight, as I say, and as we've discussed already, you can download. So they're a little bit of a summary of your textbook. So, for example, that will tell you what societal and green marketing is. As I said, the whole syllabus, we don't do this evening, but this is what we call our marketing strategy. So in chapter 1, you will see it tells us that the marketing mix, those 4 P's of marketing, form the basis of your marketing strategy once you know what your customer is all about. But we have sessions dedicated to each one of these coming forward. So again, the textbook will tell you that marketing is a process of selecting target markets, developing product strategies, etc. But again, we are going to formulate our own examples of that. Any questions before I look at a specific area with you guys? Okay. When you do your self-directed learning and you look at chapter 2, chapter 2 is looking at the marketing environment. Now we know what company is on the screen there. If we don't, then we are not a South African. I've used Mr. Price because we all know it, whether we are customers, whether we're not customers, whether we are employees of Mr. Price or not, but it is a very strong South African brand. And I want to use Mr. Price just very briefly tonight, because I'm also going to send you some videos tomorrow of how do our companies, such as Mr. Price, operate in an environment. So we know that companies develop these marketing strategies, which we're going to learn about, but all companies work within environments. So when we talk about the Mr. Price environment, let's think about South Africa now. And from an academic perspective, we need to understand that there are 3 critical environments. So this is what we're looking at now. Here, there's your whole syllabus on one slide. We're going to take Mr. Price and briefly look at its micro environment, its market environment, and its macro environment. So let's have a look. I want to get, there we go. So this is a diagram that says all companies. It doesn't matter what kind of company you are, whether you are Apple International or you Mr. Price or you are a small startup business in South Africa, all companies operate in 3 environments. And we're going to start with the micro environment here, which is the inside or the internal environment of a company. We then look at the market environment, and I'll explain that, and then the macro environment, and I'll explain that. So let's just have a brief look at Mr. Price. This is actually from their website. We know that the Mr. Price Group is a value retailer. Their vision is to be top performing, to add value to life, etc. A really good, strong South African brand. A brand that we recognize very clearly, and also a brand that employs a lot of South African people. We know who they are. What does Mr. Price's microenvironment mean? So the microenvironment that Mr. Price operates in is its internal, what it can control. Probably the most important element of a microenvironment is it is the only environment that a company can control. So a Mr. Price controls its target market. Who are they going to focus on? It can also control its marketing strategy, its promotion of products, its type of products that it gives to the world. It can control its product knowledge, its skills, its sales, its facilities, etc. And the analysis of the microenvironment allows us and marketers and Mr. Price, a company, to determine what they're good at, what they can do. They might have to change the price of a particular product because something has happened in the market or the macro environment. But essentially, the microenvironment is within Mr. Price, and it is all the elements that they have control over. Here I've just given you a little bit of information about Mr. Price Apparel, which is one of the divisions of Mr. Price, its product offering, its customer and positioning, and these are all examples of what Mr. Price can control. They can control their products. They can control the way the markets see them. They can control their distribution. They can control their promotions. So the microenvironment is a controllable environment. Just giving you a little bit more information which you can read in your own time about Mr. Price and how it operates in South Africa, and just showing you also a little bit of information about its sales per division. So we can see that Mr. Price Home and Miladies is also part of the Mr. Price Group. Mr. Price Sport, Street, you can see that Mr. Price Apparel, which is the red, is their biggest part of their company. So interesting. The other environment that all companies operate in is what we call the market environment. And these are the companies that can really influence the pricing, the whole strategy of Mr. Price. So one of the important elements of this is that Mr. Price as a company does not have control over its customers, the suppliers, intermediaries, competitors, think about it, but they can influence this type of environment through their marketing strategy. So to give you an example, if we take competitors as part of the market environment, there we go. There's some competitors for Mr. Price, and let's just say Factory and H&M really start reducing or keeping prices stable. That might change Mr. Price's pricing strategy going forward. So whilst Mr. Price has no control over what Factory and H&M and say Cotton On do, what they can do is change their marketing strategy to be able to compete with the competitors. So the market environment is not something that can be controlled by Mr. Price, but it can use its marketing strategy to influence. So just a good example of that. And then the final environment, which all companies operate in, is what we call the macro environment. And these are all those elements that affect a company and that company has absolutely no control over. So when we study these macro environments, and I think you do it in business management as well, is that we put them into groups, but we don't really look at them in business. This was one of my first jobs, is to analyze the environment in banking. Can you believe it? So we don't go, oh, well, political, legal, or technical, environmental, but to learn, we look at them in different groups so that we can understand. So we look at these different elements and say, what's happening in the international world that is affecting Mr. Price? What is happening in the South African economy that is affecting Mr. Price? And just to show you some examples. So here, remember that Mr. Price has no control over this macro environment, unfortunately, as does any other company. But let's look at some of the variables that would affect them badly. So if we look at the economic factors, we know we're all suffering as a result of the weakening of the rand, inflation, the increase in unemployment. We've got shaky foreign direct investment at the moment because of interest rates and inflation, etc. We as the customer are being squeezed in terms of disposable income, tax changes. Now, all these economic elements affect Mr. Price and their strategy. Is their pricing too high for their target market now? How are they going to ensure that they are still going to make the profits from us when we're getting actually poorer? So these are some of the economic variables that would affect Mr. Price. If we have a look, let's take another example. Let's look at the international environment. My goodness, and we've got quite a few. Despite Mr. Price operating predominantly in South Africa, not just in South Africa, by the way, it's got a arm in Australia, some of the African countries, but we can see internationally there's increased competition. I don't know if you guys buy from Shein. My goodness, my daughter is a Shein lover, but we are not just competing with South African companies or American companies anymore, but there is a huge increase in global competition due to the technical advancements that we've got. So we can buy from anywhere, anytime. So there's increased competition. Yes, another Shein lover. Gosh, and I feel terrible buying from Shein because I think we should buy something from South Africa. But anyway, but that is an example of huge competition. We have got war in the world, which is affecting us. It's affecting our supply chains. It is affecting food and gas and energy elements that eventually knock on to South African companies. We have supply chain issues still as a result of the COVID issues, war elements. So all the things that are happening in the international environment, every time America changes its interest rates or inflation, etc., because we're an emerging economy, we get affected. If we look at, so those are some examples there. if we look at our physical environment. So what are the physical factors that are affecting Mr. Price? Well, the big fat one that is affecting all of us, as I sit in the dark chatting to you now, is our energy crisis. So companies are struggling enormously with load shedding and making Plan B and Plan C, etc. But that is affecting their profits and their operating costs, etc. So an energy crisis is something that is severely affecting a Mr. Price. Every time we have water or drought issues in South Africa or storm issues, it affects a company like Mr. Price. The COVID pandemic affected every company around the world. And then examples of, say, the social environment. So how are we as people in South Africa changing? Well, how are our lifestyles evolving? The retailers saw, because of COVID, everybody stayed at home and worked in their pajamas, unless you had a meeting and then you wore a nice shirt on the top and you wore pajamas and slippers on the bottom. And so our whole clothing changed, our whole clothing patterns changed. Other than a few Shein lovers like ourselves, there are a lot of proudly South African consumer trends. So our behavior is changing all the time. And so this is another element that will affect Mr. Price. So these are just some examples for you, using a company that we all know to say, what are the things that are part of the political environment, the technical environment, that affect a business, i.e. a Mr. Price in South Africa. And this is important for you guys because this is an important part of your portfolio of evidence. And you will see some themes as we go along in our studies and in our collabs. Is I do focus on the areas that are important for your portfolio of evidence, and that is an assistance element, and also for you to be able to ask questions and for us to kind of flesh it out a little bit more. So those three environments are really, really important. In the slides that you have access to now, it's just giving you some explanations of what those environments are. As I say, it's a nice summary for you guys for your textbook. Are there any questions? I just want to quickly go back to that slide that gives us the nice summary. Are there any questions on these three environments that all companies operate in? I just want to go back. This is the one I want. Any questions? Okay, so we're all good. You guys would be able to apply these environments, the micro, the market, and the macro, to a particular company if you got one. Okay, so what do companies do with information like this? You know, you have analysts that sit and go, oh my word, people have less disposable income and our profits are being affected by load shedding, etc. But what is the whole point of gathering all this information? Well, what companies do, and they do it very well, and I've done it personally, can you believe it? And I can show you lots of examples, is they develop a SWOT analysis. Does everybody know what a SWOT analysis is? It's taking everything in the environment and trying to understand what a company is good at and where it needs to improve in terms of strengths and weaknesses, and what those environments are offering in terms of opportunities to the companies and threats. So as an example, Mr. Price, we can see that in South Africa it has a very strong brand. We know that because we all know Mr. Price. And one of the threats identified in the macro environment is the increased competition and increased international competition. And now the economic squeezes and customer changes. So these are some of the threats that have been identified. So I'm just reading what we are doing at the moment. But when were the ice tasks due? No, we don't have a final date for ice tasks yet. The online campus will give us a date. Your ice tasks, each one is not due by a particular date. There will be an end date for the ice tasks, but we haven't received that yet. I would work on the end of October as your final ice task date, but I don't have it for you yet. Sorry. I hope that helps. So that's the theory that I wanted to just cover with you very briefly tonight. I'm going to send you a nice video on it tomorrow, kind of tell you where we are, but I hope that has been a beneficial session for you. Yes, that's a very good question. Is that, yes, so what happens in one environment will definitely have an effect on the other environment. So let's use the example. Let's take Mr. Price. So Mr. Price has decided to have a massive sale and reduced their apparel, so all their clothing, by say 20%. That would then have an effect on, say, maybe H&M, etc. Some of the other competitors. I was going to say Zara, but that's not a direct competitor, but some of the cheaper retailers, and they might then change their pricing strategies. And then to give you another example, just say our VAT increases, or interest rates and inflation go up again. That means that our disposable income reduces. That means we have less income to go and purchase our value clothing at Mr. Price, and therefore that would influence how Mr. Price then sets up its marketing strategy going forward. It might then have to reduce prices even further. It might have to change its distribution strategy. It might have to find different avenues to promote, whatever it may be. But that's a very good point. Yes, the environments all affect each other, from inside the company to the macro environment. Any more questions from you guys? Okay, well, thank you very much. I know the first time there's so much information, and please email me. I think I've sent you my email address. Yes, I have. It's on announcements for any clarification, but I will be in constant touch with you. I will put your POE on Learn. If it changes, you do need to constantly make sure that you have the final version. I'll just check that. But I think that's enough information for one night. Gosh, because it's long. But thank you so much for your time. Please, no, don't panic. That's why we can't go through it tonight. You know how you eat an elephant, because your POE is like an elephant. It's in bite-sized chunks. Hey? So we're going to chunk it up. Don't feel overwhelmed by it. But thank you very much, everybody. If you want any companies to chat about, also let me know. Let's always use things you're interested in. And I will see you in 2 weeks' time, and I will be in touch in the meantime. So enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you very much.